Hello and welcome to Rambling Runner Reviews, and today we're talking about the Nike ZoomX Invincible. So this shoe came on the scene this year and it made a lot of people really excited, okay? Namely because of what you hear in the name, the ZoomX foam. The ZoomX foam is the foam that Nike has been using in their carbon-plated racers that has just, caught the world by storm, right? This is the foam that makes everything else possible. People talk about the carbon-plated shoes thinking that the carbon and the plate is what makes them super. Oftentimes, it's the foam. And the ZoomX foam is a main reason for it. And people have been clamoring for a ZoomX everyday trainer type that they can use in conjunction with their carbon-plated racers that they're using either for race day or just for training and doing those high mileage, not high mileage, but the speedy miles that they want to do. And Nike delivered. They gave the people what they want. With that said, this shoe is not without some significant flaws, and especially for me and runners like me. So let's dive into the fit. First of all, the specs. Okay, so this shoe is just under 10 ounces for the men and around 8.5 for the women, size 9, size 8 respectively. Huge heel drop on this shoe, okay? So you have, especially for a daily trainer, okay? So heel drop is 37 in the heel, 28 in the forefoot. That is a 9mm offset. That's a little bit on the higher side, not crazy, kind of like mid-high from what you're gonna see in a lot of places. However, with heel drop, the numbers don't always tell the story. This is something that you really have to learn as you go through wearing shoes and really looking at the specs, because oftentimes, and we talked about this in the last review, so the Puma Velocity Nitro, where the heel drop was 8, it felt around 8, if not closer to 7 or 6. So this is listed at a 9. This feels like a 12 to me. Okay, this absolutely feels like a 12, and that really changes things. We're going to talk more about that when we talk about the ride and continuity of this shoe, but it's important to know that the specs don't always tell the story with shoes. But with that said, in terms of the fit and the lockdown, the fit is great. So I wear a size 10.5 men's, and this fit me perfectly from the toe perspective, right on the money. From a width perspective, now this was interesting. There have been plenty of Nikes that I've struggled with because either they're too narrow, especially in the midfoot, or the arch was something that was just too high for me. I remember, I think it was the Pegasus 35. I really liked everything about that shoe except for the arch. It became this like fulcrum that my foot was landing on and was creating foot pain, which was such a pain in the butt for me because I loved the upper, I loved the fit, I loved the outsole, and I even loved the midsole. It was just how it was shaped was a problem for me. This shoe did not give me that problem at all. I actually bought this shoe at Dick's Sporting Goods with my own money, so there's not affiliated with any brands. Random disclaimer, this is my review only. No one else is influencing that. So I wanted to make sure I tried this shoe on for myself to make sure I didn't have the same arch problem that I had with the Peg 35. And I absolutely did not. It fit really well. Also, which is, I won't say new for Nike, but I think Nike has been known to fit more narrow people's feet in the past. With that said, this was a very accommodating upper, especially in the forefoot. If you like forefoot splay, if you have a wider foot, this shoe could absolutely accommodate you in what you're looking for. So that's a huge positive for people who have a wider foot, who maybe aren't used to wearing Nike or are considering wearing Nike. This could be a good option for you from a fit perspective. Overall, it fit me really, really well in terms of just step-in comfort, lacing up, and not having any kind of foot pain out on the run. Okay, so let's talk about ride, because this whole review is all about ride for me. This is the big sticking point. Okay, so I'm looking over my sheet right here, make sure I do everything right landing. From a landing perspective, this is kind of where it goes off the rails for me. Okay, so this is the tough part because I am a midfoot striker. I will occasionally have a little bit of a heel scuff, but not really a heel landing. And this shoe is not made for people like me. Let me just say it flat out. This shoe makes you a heel striker. So if you aren't already a heel striker, you will heel strike in the Nike ZoomX Invincible. It's just the way it goes. Not only is a massive heel, okay, just in terms of the stack height, But look at the width of this thing. That is enormous. Look at it, it juts out way wide. You can see it from the bottom as well. This shoe is the back of it. This shoe has a big, big butt. It just does. It has a huge butt. And you can actually see there's a ton of some overlays here. You have a plastic clip as well. This shoe, and even on the top, they have like, not only is it cushioned on the inside, and it's very comfortable. It is a very, very comfortable upper. Tons of plush cushioning. They even have cushioning on the outside of the upper. I'm not really sure why. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But ultimately, how this heel was constructed, it really shows you that this whole endeavor, this whole ZoomX Daily Trainer experiment was all about the heel. And it makes me wonder if that was really about just the stability of the squishy ZoomX midsole. Okay, so this midsole is very squishy. Look at that. I'm putting almost no pressure, super duper squish. And that is wonderful. But it reminds me of so many people who had trouble with the Asics Nova Blast version 1. Because that shoe, and I had the version 1, was super unstable. Okay, the heel was much more narrow in terms of like the heel midsole, not the upper. The midsole heel was much more narrow. It created a lot of instability. It was a big problem for a lot of people. I don't need stability shoes. Even I almost threw them out after 30 miles. I just could not run in them. And then after breaking them in, once at the 50-mile mark, then they were okay. And I wonder if they were trying to make sure they didn't have a similar issue with this shoe, where instability was so great that it turned off so many people. And they're doing interesting things, because even the forefoot is super duper wide. Again, and you see the heel coverage, I mean the outsole coverage of rubber, right? They're doing a lot of things from a stability perspective here to make sure that you're gonna feel like this shoe can go the distance for you, you can turn corners in it, and overall wear it for a lot of different reasons. The problem is, if you're on a heel striker, you're not gonna fit into that boat, because like me, you're gonna have an issue where I don't want a heel strike for 8, 9, 10, 12 miles, right? If I'm wearing this on an easy day, and we're gonna talk about uses in a second, you know, kind of like a recovery day, that's different. But doing 80% of my miles in a shoe that's forcing me to land in a way that I don't want to land is a problem. That is a huge, huge problem. Okay, so we talked about landing, propulsion. The ZoomX is super nice. Okay, so even from a landing perspective, the foam is great. The foam speaks for itself. It is absolutely the best thing about this shoe. The Flyknit upper is also really nice. I am a big fan of it, but the ZoomX is what does the trick on this shoe. It is wonderful. It's pillowy soft. It does give you a bit of propulsion. It's bottom heavy. So the shoe is a bit bottom heavy. So while it's not super heavy, right? If you're under 10 ounces on a daily trainer for a men's size 9 and women's size 8, you're 8.5-ish. That's not bad from a weight perspective, but it can feel a little heavier than that. I think this shoe does feel a little bit heavier than that. It does have a nice landing to it. From a propulsion standpoint, I just really couldn't get that push off because I didn't feel like I was landing the way I wanted to. So let's just go right into continuity. I wasn't landing the way I wanted to, which altered the way I was running. And when shoes alter the way you're running, it just doesn't feel like you really want to pick up the paces. And that's the case for me. So I did some strides in this shoe. I kind of did like some longer runs as well. And I also did some moderately paced runs. This shoe felt at its best when I was doing recovery runs at really chill, slow pace. And that's fine. There's no problem for that. And we're just gonna go right into the last category here. We got value. Gotta talk about value because there's nothing wrong with having a recovery day shoe. That's great. Recovery days are a part of the game. But do you really want to spend $180 on a recovery day shoe? That is not a lot of miles per dollar. And that is not something that I'm looking to do. So do I have some buyer's regret with this one? Yeah, I do. Absolutely I do. I bought this shoe. I almost bought the Nova Blast 2. I went with this one instead. And I have some regrets. That is for sure. So for me, if you are a heel striker, you might feel completely differently. So I will say that if you are a heel striker, this shoe might do it all for you from a daily training perspective, okay? Because the heel is super stable. You're gonna be able to land and then push off. The continuity will completely change. For me, the continuity was non-existent. For you, the continuity might be perfect. This thing might be great for you. Under 10 ounces, you got all the ZoomX, you have rubber that's gonna last 500 miles. I mean, this rubber is no joke and it's everywhere. So this is going to be a really durable shoe. And the thing is with the ZoomX foam, even if it does deaden out, it's so springy and there's so much of it that it's still going to be really good even when it is deadened out. And that's going to be a huge thing for this shoe. So if you are a heel striker, this shoe could be a really, really good value, especially if you can get it from one of the sales. I have seen some sales pushing some colorways and some sizes closer to 150. So heel strikers, delight for sure. Midfoot strikers, tons of flaws. It's a really intriguing shoe. I am excited by it, and I'm excited for, I guess, the next version of it, because maybe they can do kind of like what I'm thinking what ASICS did with the Keanu and the Keanu Light. Now, this is not a stability shoe, but something like that, right? The Nike ZoomX Invincible 2 and the Nike ZoomX Invincible 2 Light, I guess, where we strip down the midsole, on the heel and make it better for people who are midfoot strikers. You think about the ASICS Metaspeed Sky, ASICS Metaspeed Edge. They have two different shoes for how people run. Maybe Nike can do that with this. I think there'd be a market for it. Their markets are already huge. They're the biggest selling running shoe company in the world. I know I would absolutely take a look at version 2. Even though I have buyer's regret with this one, I would definitely take a look at version 2 if it was made more for a midfoot striker. And I mean, there's just so many things to love about this shoe, but ultimately, if you're not landing the way you want to, and it becomes cumbersome, and you have to think through every step, that's just not the things that daily trainers are made for. So, with that being said, thank you so much for watching this review. Go check out our first one, the Puma Nitro Velocity. Actually, Puma Velocity Nitro. The naming conventions. I always have to make sure I get that right. Also, you gotta check out the podcast, the Rambling Runner Podcast, one of the top running podcasts in the country for, what, 3 years now. So go check them out. We're following dedicated amateur runners who are doing inspiring and motivating things. In addition to that, every other Friday, we're doing the Fail Forward Friday, where I'm doing 2 segments with people who, you know, in a moment in their life, they thought they were failing, but it turned out they weren't. That was just a catalyst for big time change. And we talk about those stories as well, which is a lot of fun. Got all of the links for that in the show notes. Make sure you press subscribe and like the video. Thank you so much for watching, and happy running.